next item is item 3 for the City of Bossier City. This is an election request for the December 7th ballot for the City of Bossier City to amend its home rule charter. I would note, we passed out earlier, we do have a letter of opposition that we just handed out to you along with another document there. And I would note that the item, it's been reviewed and it meets the technical requirements.
Okay.
Stop there.
All right. So we do have 2 white cards. I guess, yeah, both in opposition. First, we have David Crockett. You'd like to step forward? Sure. Yeah, come forward. And if you would, sir, restate your name and who you represent and anything else that be relevant to the subcommittee.
Absolutely. David Crockett. I live in North Bossier City. I'm a member of the Bossier Term Limits Coalition, and I appreciate the opportunity to address this issue. This issue is very controversial in Bossier City, and since you just received the memo, I think I should probably read from the memo if that's appropriate.
That's correct. That's fine.
But honorable commission members and Mr. Fleming, appreciate all the work that you guys do for our local communities. At the heart of American governments is a respect for the rule of law and the constitutionality enshrined in the rights of the people to hold their government accountable. Bossier Term Limits Coalition stands in defense of these principles. We believe that the local government must uphold the highest standards of transparency, accountability, and adherence to its own laws as set forth in Bossier City Charter and the Louisiana Constitution. The attempt in Bossier City Council to circumvent these values, though through procedural shortcuts, undermines the very foundation of conservative legal principles, limited government, and respect for the Constitution, and as well fiscal responsibility. Bossier City Term Limits Coalition thanks the Bond Commission. I'm going to skip this part, formality. The first issue that we want to address is what we think is the violation of the city charter's legal requirements. Current Bossier City Charter requires an ordinance, not a resolution, to be passed for charter amendments. Section 320 of the charter explicitly mandates that any proposal to amend the charter must be enacted by ordinance, which requires 2 readings. They have proposed an ordinance. It's only had 1 reading. The second reading has not occurred. In addition to other acts required by law, or this is out of the charter, it says, in addition to other acts as required by law or by any specific provision of the charter to be done by ordinance, those actions of the city council listed below shall be by ordinance. And section Q of that says propose any amendments to this charter. So it requires an ordinance. This process is critical as it provides the citizens their First Amendment right to speak for or against any such measures and influence their elected representatives. Bossier City, in violation of this charter provision, has forwarded the resolution to the Bond Commission without the required ordinance. This requirement to create an ordinance is repeated in Chapter 21 of the current Home Rule Charter, Section 2101, and I have the whole charter if anybody would like to have a copy before I leave. Section 2101 reads, amendments to the charter may be proposed as follows by the City Council in the form of an ordinance, except that it shall not be subject to veto, embodying the proposed amendment or providing for submission of the charter to a Charter Review Commission as established by Section 1302, and then subject to a special election as herein provided. Bossier City has passed the resolution, which was forwarded to the Bond Commission on October 10th. That's the very end of last week. However, Bossier City has violated its city charter by not complying with the controlling provision requiring an ordinance before sending the resolution to the Louisiana Bond Commission for consideration. Assistant Bossier City Attorney Richard Ray, who's present today, acknowledged to the City Council he was unsure of the legal consequences if the resolution authorizing the proposed charter amendment was approved by the Bond Commission, but the required ordinance failed to pass, a situation which unfortunately is a possibility in that only the first reading of the ordinance has occurred. The final reading of the ordinance necessary to forward this resolution is scheduled for October 21st after the Bond Commission's consideration. This means that Bossier City has prematurely submitted the resolution, infringing upon the procedural rights of the citizens and violating its own laws. Contradiction of the charter amendment process. The ordinance established a charter commission. Ordinance 154 authorizes amendments to the existing charter. However, the resolution before the Bond Commission proposes a complete amended and restated charter, a far more drastic measure than simple amendments. This amended and restated charter violates the current Bossier City Charter, which requires any amendment to address a single subject and be clearly expressed in the title. That's in section 2103. Each amendment, however proposed, may include more than one section of the charter, provided that it relates to a single subject that must be clearly expressed in the title, unquote. Assistant Attorney Richard Ray ignores the violation and in comments to the council simply states that this is how the current Bossier City Charter was amended, alluding to the fact that the previous violation of the Home Rule Charter from the Bossier City government excuses this current violation. It's noteworthy that the current Bossier City Charter was not challenged and that the prescription period to challenge it has elapsed. As explained by Jeffrey Sadow, PhD, LSUS, a noted tenured political science professor, the current efforts exceed the scope of the authorized by both the city charter and the Louisiana Constitution. The rushed and improper process by the Charter Commission violates the intent of the letter of the law. The independent review of the amended and restated proposed charter in Proposition 1 contains over 160 individual edits covering scores of topics, and the plain reading of the Bossier City Charter would require that Bossier City submit each topic as an amendment. This is a wise measure that is echoed in the state constitution, Article 3, Section 15A, where it says, "Every bill shall be confined to one subject. A bill shall contain a brief title indicating of its object." We respectfully request the Bond Commission return and reject the proposition number 1 for violating Bossier City Charter and the spirit of the Louisiana Constitution. We also want to make one more point, that burden of the taxpayers due to legal mismanagement. We feel like that Bossier City has already incurred approximately $500,000 in legal expenses, largely as a result of finding term limits in the last year, not including the current lawsuit, in legal expenses contesting 2 term limits petitions. Allowing this flawed resolution to proceed would not only violate current procedural laws, but also invite further litigation, increasing costs that will ultimately fail upon...
Mr. Crockett?
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me for interrupting you. I'm not a lawyer, and this is not a court of law, so we're not going to make any of those decisions, whether it's constitutional. That's not really our purpose here today. But let me ask you a question. You said that there should have been an ordinance passed rather than a resolution. What is the threshold for those two to be passed? One failed, one passed. So what is that threshold?
Well, the threshold is that it requires 2 readings in the city council where the public gets an opportunity, and it requires a majority of the council to pass each reading. If it fails, then it would not go forward. So
I guess my basic question is, why would a resolution pass on the same subject and the same content and an ordinance wouldn't? What's different about those?
A resolution only requires 1 reading. However, the charter itself, if I go back to what it says, it requires one of the listed.
But it's basically a majority vote. Is that correct?
It absolutely is a majority vote.
Okay, so the ordinance had to have 2 readings and I guess 2 votes. It must have passed on one and then failed on another, and then the resolution passed on one. Is that correct?
Well, they have not given themselves enough time to meet this requirement. So the next reading on the ordinance is not for another 10 days.
So there has to be a gap of time.
There has to be a gap of time. It doesn't necessarily say a specified amount of time.
Well, let me say, from our standpoint, from the Bond Commission standpoint, it doesn't matter whether it's an ordinance or a resolution. That is a matter that does, I'm sure, affect your ongoing litigation, and that, of course, may affect the outcome from that standpoint. For us, that's not an issue. We pass resolutions all the time here. So I just wanted to make that point. What other points do you make, again, aside from law and the Constitution, which we're not here to judge? What points do you make here today that you want everyone to know about the commission?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to read that. I've really read through most of my points.
Right.
We have another speaker here. But
Right.
my main problem that I would like to present to this group is that the expeditious nature of the way they're doing this and violating the timeline that gives the people allowed time that's required by our charter to speak on these issues. That's a constitutional First Amendment right that we have to comment.
But getting away from the Constitution, I'm just looking at an administrative question. So as I understand it, the input I've had on this is what this comes down to is retroactive or non-retroactive or prospective term limits, that everyone agrees that there should be term limits, but there's still disagreement and even litigation over whether or not they would actually be retroactive.
Would you like for me to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay, well, basically, to bring you up to, Mr. Lowrie is going to speak on that, but one of the points that he may not have been prepared to speak on specifically is that this is our second petition that we've done. Retroactivity is in our petition that we won the case at the 26 JDC, who pretty much, almost, some of the arguments that were made by the city were really not taken very seriously because they weren't serious arguments. So we do have retroactivity in our term limits, and basically one of the conclusions of the judge's ruling was that the city should not have stopped our petition because they would have to pass it, and then somebody in the council would have to challenge it in order to deal with the constitutionality of the retroactivity of the term limits. So, and in fact, we don't believe that it's in any way unconstitutional to have retroactivity of term limits.
Okay, so really, from what I can determine, everybody agrees that there should be term limits. The only disagreement is whether they're retroactive or not. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I realize there's a lot of administrative and legal questions here, but I'm just trying to boil it down to the essence of what the real disagreement is here.
Well, Mr. Fleming, it's not just that. Some of the other changes that occurred in the charter, we don't believe are fixing the problems in Bossier City, so it's not just term limits. We believe that the charter is not fixing the major problem that Bossier City has with its city council taking away the responsibilities of the mayor. So we're arguing that they didn't take the time to give the people enough time to comment on those issues as well. There are some things that they've changed in the new charter that are going to be improvement, but I don't think that they've taken some of the other issues seriously that the people wanted.
Right. Okay, before I recognize Mr. Lowrie, are you a resident, citizen of Bossier City?
I am not myself, but on the memo that you got of the 52 or so signatures that we got, the majority of those are citizens in Bossier City. Right. I do pay Bossier City water. I do spend all my money in Bossier City, and I have a right to comment in the council meetings. And so I am one of the original members of the Bossier Term Limits Coalition, and I was a petitioner myself that walked the streets in Bossier City.
Right. Now, you're not an attorney representing this. You're a citizen.
I'm a citizen.
Okay. All right. Mr. Lowrie, Duke Lowrie, good to see you today.
Test. Okay.
Kind of tell us what your role is here today, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, again, my name is Michael Lowrie. My home address is 1835 Glen Cove Drive, Benton, Louisiana. To the point of being a citizen of Bossier, I do not live within the geographical boundaries of the city of Bossier, although I was born there in 1970. I've had a private business there for 27 years. I retired from the Bossier City Fire Department. I currently serve as the chairman of the Bossier Parish Republican Executive Committee. I have been a part of the Bossier Term Limits Coalition since the beginning. And again, this movement began with a group of citizens who were having questions and problems regarding the governance in the city of Bossier City. That coalition grew to include not only just the Republican Party of Bossier City, but the Democrat Party of Bossier, as well as the NAACP. It was a diverse group of people that come together, all in agreement. And you should know, to the issue of retroactivity, all were in agreement. And what you should also know is that the citizens of Bossier, not once, but twice, signed a petition, over each petition, over 3,000 people signing, supporting retroactivity. So to the issue of...
These are citizens of Bossier City?
Citizens of Bossier City.
Okay.
Twice, we've got a certified petition by the Registrar of Voters submitted to the city, and twice the city has sought to prevent that from going to the ballot for an election of the people. So when I didn't have kind of that to say, I did have some comments that I wanted to say, and I thought of giving you some history. Before you get to those comments,
let me just ask you the same question that I did, Mr. Crockett, and that is, you agree that the major disagreement here, there may be others, but the major one is retroactivity versus prospective term limits. Is that correct?
I would agree to it in the context that the elected officials in City Hall, namely councilmen who have been there to the tune to 20 to 30 years, are unwilling to allow the citizens to have a vote on retroactive term limits. They are actively trying to prevent that. And this resolution that you have before you, seeking to put this charter amendment, that all is spawned as a result of the citizens taking matters in their own hands to try to get a ballot initiative with retroactivity on the ballot. That is the reason why we're here.
Okay, go ahead with your other points. I just wanted to make that clear.
So the first petition that we did was in the spring of 2023, and it was certified. We submitted it. The language is clear that the city council shall submit it to a vote of the people, but they didn't. They sued, we got into court, and they sought to invalidate it on a technicality. The technicality being that the state statute requires that the year of birth be on the document. Although when we started the petition, we sought the guidance of the Secretary of State's office as well as our Registrar of Voters, who told us that if you include the voter ID number on the petition, that has all of the required prerequisite information, including the date of birth, address, voting, everything. It goes above and beyond. I went to district court. District judge said, I have to have a strict interpretation of the law. It says the year of birth has to be on there. So we said, rather than fight it any further, we don't want to waste any more taxpayer dollars. We will just go do the petition again. So we immediately started up the process of doing a second petition. And we were on our way in the fall of 2023 getting that done. Then the elected officials, the councilmen who don't want to have retroactivity, sought to convene a charter commission. And the intent of that charter commission, and I'm going to say in my opinion, was to thwart the will of the people in the petition, and they were going to seek to have a charter amendment on the same ballot with the people's petition if it made it through the process and we got the prerequisite signatures again. So that was Ordinance 154 of 2023 that passed on December 5th. The second petition, we completed it. We had it certified. We submitted it. Again, the shall language was ignored. And I would point out that at the city council meetings, the city attorney, Charles Jacobs of Bossier City, advised the city council that by his judgment, the second petition is unflawed, no flaw whatsoever, and that they are bound to send it to a vote of the people. They refused and refused and refused multiple times as the mayor put it forward. So we filed a writ of mandamus, to which Mr. Crockett was referring to momentarily ago. We got a ruling from the district court judge in the 26 JDC ordering the city to put it on the ballot. Immediately, they appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And it is being held up in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals just long enough to prevent it from going on the December ballot, December 7th ballot, and missing the window. So the Charter Commission inexplicably suddenly started jumping through hoops to complete their process so that they could seek to try to make this December 7th ballot. And October 5th, they reconvened for an additional vote. And you have to understand, throughout their process, the assistant city attorney said that we're not bound by open meeting rules. There was a lot of questions regarding that. And at one point, in fact, they were to the point of having meetings where we were having silent votes, paper ballots, that, it was secret ballots. Complaints were filed to the Attorney General's office, and I don't think that has been ruled on or action taken on it yet. But the Charter Commission voluntarily on October 5th reconvened to rescind actions taken in all the previous meetings and then reappoint members again to fill those, and as well vote on proposed charter amendments. So on October 5th, they voted for measures to send to the council to conclude the business of the Charter Commission, and they voted by unanimously to send them. I'm not going to get into what those were all. That's for another day. So the council, at a regular council meeting on October the 8th, have not received the revisions, the charter revisions, and they proposed to change the agenda to vote on the proposed recommendations from the charter. And in the course of the council meeting, the council president asked, when they're seeking to change the agenda, asked, when will we receive those revisions? To which the Charter Commission chairman responded, in a few minutes. They acknowledged that they had not received them. The point of that is that on October the 8th, that was 61 days prior to this December 7th election. So a vote was taken to the resolution that I think you guys have in front of you now, to which it failed, wasn't passed. Then the council president called a special meeting on October the 9th to be held on October the 10th, wherein they then passed this resolution that you have in front of you now.
So to that point, you're saying that even the resolution failed
The first
yes,
time at the
but
61
it
day mark.
subsequently passed.
It passed on the 10th at the 59 day mark.
Right. Okay.
And so at both junctures, and even still to this day, the revisions submitted by the Charter Commission to the council have not been publicized. The public has not had an opportunity to see those revisions. There were revisions through the process, but the final product that the Charter Commission sent, the public's not had an opportunity to see it. That's of consequence because in the ordinance of 154 of 2023, founding the Charter Commission to make amendments, it clearly delineates that it has to be publicized, and it also delineates that an election can't be called for earlier than 60 days. We're past 60 days, and it's not been publicized still to this date, right now. So, and I'm going to go a little deeper. Therefore, I request this body declare the request for an election by the City of Bossier to the Louisiana Bond Commission to be absolutely null pursuant to Article 2030 of the Louisiana Civil Code on the following grounds. The request for an election was made in violation of mandatory procedures set forth in Bossier City Ordinance 154 of 2023. Specifically, the City of Bossier failed to publicize charter recommendations before calling for an election no earlier than 60 days following publication on the recommendations, and to date, the publications still haven't been made. For the foregoing reasons, we respectfully request the Bond Commission render this request absolutely null. Bossier City Ordinance 154 of 2023 reads in part as follows, and I'm going to read the specific line that you guys would be concerned with. The City Council shall not alter or change the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission and shall call for an election for the citizens to adopt or reject the recommended revisions at the next election allowed by Louisiana law by no earlier than 60 days following publication of the recommendations. It's clear, 60 days. They have not met that standard, and they still have not publicized it to the public. Subsequently, the commission should know that as of this morning, a suit was filed in the 26 JDC seeking a temporary restraining order and preliminary and permanent injunction. There's no justified public necessity to hold an election in violation of public policy and municipal law. If approved, this election will unnecessarily cause harm to the citizens of Bossier City. In closing, we request this body defer or deny the resolution until compliance with the Bossier City Ordinance 154 of 2023 is met. Additionally, we would request production at this ad hoc meeting of the certified resolution, approval parameter form, SBC 017, and the plan of government change to include applicable sections of current plan and proposed plan that are required to be submitted to this body before you can approve this.
Let me ask both of you this question. It's really an opinion question. So the other side suggests, well, if this goes on the ballot in December and it's passed without retroactivity, that you can always submit another one that would include retroactivity that could change and revise that at a future date. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, that is fraught with problems. One thing, there's a restriction that you can't change something within 6 months. So then when if we win in court and it's ordered that they put it on the ballot, you can't do it immediately. We feel like that's an infringement on our rights. And basically you can't do something right to fix their wrong. If they violated the 60 days, that's a violation of Bossier City's charter. That's in the charter, plus it's in the ordinance that they passed. So I think that's one thing that can happen, but it's not absolutely certain that, whether our change that referred to the previous charter would apply to the new charter. We can't know that without going through some other legal battle. What's happening in Bossier City in politics there is they continue to challenge us. Yes, we're going to vote the way that we want to vote. They violate the charter repeatedly on this and other issues. And then they go to the people, and the only way for us to find remedy is to sue the city. It's hurting Bossier City. As I've concluded a while ago, they've spent over $500,000 in 1 year on legal battles on a city that has about 70,000 people who live in the city. It's hurting Bossier City.
All right. What about you, Mr. Lowrie?
To that point, I've heard that argument, and I heard it recently at the Bossier City Council by the City Attorney's Office in Bossier, and they allege that, this won't impede the people's petition when it comes out of the 26 JDC here in November, and that could then go on a ballot. It could amend the charter. I would point to, but what they don't tell everyone in the public is that the current charter, section 2107, reads as follows: results of the election. If a majority of the votes cast on any proposed charter or amendment shall be in favor thereof, it shall be adopted, and the charter shall be amended accordingly as of the date of such election, unless the proposed amendment provides for a later date. Provided, however, that if two or more proposed amendments are submitted at the same election, the terms of which conflict with one another, and each receives a majority of votes cast thereon, that amendment shall be deemed adopted, which receives the largest number of votes. What's going to happen is Once they get this ballot initiative on, they will have created a new charter, a wholly new charter. The people's petition, when it comes along, it will have been to amend an old charter. And they say it could then be applied. That's inaccurate. It will not do that. I contend that that is an attempt to mislead the public. I believe that these proposals are both misleading this bond commission as well as the citizens of Bossier City, and it should be deferred until the courts decide both issues. The pending litigation that was filed this morning, as well as the litigation regarding the people's petition that will be resolved by the 26th or the Second Circuit in November.
May I add one thing? It was stated very briefly, the bond commission, or not the bond commission, the Bossier City Charter Commission has an 18-month window to conclude its tasks. That does not end until June timeframe next year. There is no rush for them to put this on the ballot right now, except to try to find some way to convolute the issue of whether retroactivity is going to be applied or not. The rush was because we were going to get this through the courts, possibly. We feel like that this was for nefarious purposes.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? If not, and I don't have any other white cards. Anyone else want to speak on the matter? Okay.
May I just make one more quick comment, because it just came to mind? I just want you to know that this issue has been polled in Bossier City, and anywhere, district to district, anywhere between 70 to 80+ % of people in every district support the retroactivity term limits that we've already proposed.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, you're excused, and we've got some more white cards. Oh, they're filling them out now? Okay, sure, that's fine. And incidentally, to my colleagues on the committee, don't hesitate to, if you have questions or comments, please do so. All right, good morning. If you would, state your names and your role.
Sure. Good morning, Dr. Fleming and members of the ad hoc committee. My name is Richard Ray. I serve as the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Bossier City.
Good morning, Brennan Black with Foley & Udell. We are bond counsel to the city and are assisting them with this election. So, Mr. Treasurer, if I could start, I certainly appreciate your comments earlier. This is not a legal forum, and we are not here to debate matters of interpretation of the charter. If I could just refute a couple of the points that were made earlier that I think are pertinent to the application that is before you this morning. There was a statement that this should have been done by ordinance, not by resolution. What the charter actually requires is that proposed amendments to the charter be by ordinance. It does not say that resolutions calling elections are impermissible. That is what this is. The charter does not say that calling an election has to be by ordinance, nor, to my knowledge, does any home rule charter in this state. So that is the first point. That ordinance also, proposing amendments, I think, has been adopted in accordance with Section 21.01 when they established the Charter Review Commission. And what the charter says is that any proposed amendments must come by petition or by recommended changes from the commission, which is what we are addressing here today. Also, with respect to the resolution, there was a comment that that resolution failed the first time around, which is also incorrect. There was no vote on the resolution itself. The vote was to amend the posted agenda for that meeting date. So when the resolution was actually properly on the agenda for the special meeting, it was adopted unanimously by all members present. So just one point of clarification there.
And to follow up on some of Mr. Black's points, it's my understanding that the only thing that this body needs is a resolution calling for an election. And as Mr. Black said, due to the fact that there have been efforts since May of this year to derail and to slow the Charter Review Commission. It has been a difficult process led by people that, for the most part, like the two that are here today, that don't live in Bossier City. And there was a meeting that was had not on October the 5th, that was a Saturday, it was Friday, October the 4th. That was after the publication of the agenda for the Bossier City Council for last Tuesday, October the 8th. And so we asked the City Council to add to the agenda a resolution calling for the election and an ordinance that is required under our charter, but that is not required for the election to be called. The resolution, there were only 5 members of the City Council present during that meeting. We have 7. One of the members declined to add it to the agenda, so because it was not unanimous, it was not added to the agenda. That's why there was a special meeting 2 days later with an agenda properly posted, timely posted, and it passed. There was one member of the City Council that voted against it, but it did pass with the requisite number of votes. It was 4-1 that day, the resolution. But it's notable that there was an ordinance that was unanimously added to the Tuesday, October 8th meeting, and it passed unanimously. And 2 members of the council were not present. They have publicly stated that they are in favor of it. And when we have a meeting on October the 22nd, I fully expect that the ordinance that is just required under our charter will pass. There are certainly the votes to be there, and it will pass. Now, there's been a lot of misinformation that has been clearly spread in an effort to derail a process that is provided in our city charter. And we have not had revisions to our city charter since 2005. It's been almost 20 years, and it's been long overdue. And yes, there are a lot of changes that were proposed in an amended and restated charter that we would like to put to the voters of Bossier City. I serve as the assistant city attorney. We are a staff of, we have a full-time city attorney and a part-time assistant city attorney. I'm that. We're a fairly large city, but we have a very small legal staff. The city attorney was out on a medical leave due to a serious medical condition. On the Charter Review Commission, each of the 7 council members get to appoint a member. They have to be an elector that lives in Bossier City. They each appointed a person, and the mayor appointed 2. The meetings began in January, and they methodically worked through meetings. They had several town hall meetings. They had several workshops. I was at every meeting with the exception of, we had one on April the 8th, and my family wanted to go see the eclipse, so we left to go see that. Every single one of them, I was at the meetings. There was a lot of work done by people who live in Bossier City, who vote in Bossier City, who care about Bossier City, and who have desperately want to put this to the voters. And it will go to the voters at some point. We think it's better to be there on December the 7th. They feel that there is this effort to slow it down. I believe that all that does is make this worse. Procedurally, everything has been done correctly by a duly impaneled Charter Review Commission. It proposes to put 3 things on the ballot in December: an amended and restated charter, a proposal for term limits, which would either amend the existing charter or the amended and restated charter that would impose prospective term limits on our city council, and then a third proposal which would impose a prospective 3-term limit on our mayor. Either it would amend the existing charter or the amended and restated charter if it's passed. All of that seems to be better done in December, especially knowing the fact that this other effort that has nothing to do with what we're here today on, what they term the People's Petition, is tied up in the courts where they took it. But if it comes out of the Second Circuit or the Louisiana Supreme Court and it's able to be put on a ballot, then it can be put on a ballot in the future. These things that they're telling you that we can't have these things, we can't have 2 amendments within 6 months. I could cite you in the charter where that's incorrect. That just means that there can't be 2 citizens' petitions within 6 months. There's nothing prohibiting a time limit of what we could do here. And I can tell you that in 2004, a city charter was proposed to the city voters of Bossier City. It was an amended and restated charter. It had in it a proposed 2.75% yearly increase in water rates. It failed, probably because of that. In 2005, they came back and did another amended and restated charter without it, and it passed. And it's the charter that we've been acting under for nearly 20 years.
Let me interrupt you for a moment, and because this is all procedure stuff. The Bond Commission recognizes that this resolution has met all of the technical specifications. That's not really a matter of debate here. However, there is a lot of issues, apparently controversial issues, having to do with what happened back in Bossier City, and as recently as today, a TRO was requested. It's not been signed. But let me ask you this: who actually initiated the movement to have term limits for the city council?
Well, I would argue, Dr. Fleming, that was initiated by, there were 3 individuals that ran for city council on the issue of enacting term limits because Bossier City's never had it, and Mayor Chandler, who was elected in March of 2021.
But after they were elected, did they initiate, did they begin a process or anything after they were elected? Everybody says they want term limits before they're elected. Let's just get that out there on the record. You've got members of Congress who all the time say that they want term limits and they'll only serve 3 terms and all of that. But it's kind of funny how they forget that once they're elected. So I'll say in all disclosure here, I have no term limits as treasurer. I have no problem if the legislature wants to pass them prospectively or retrospectively. I have no problem with that at all. So anyway, again, my question is, who actually initiated the movement to have term limits?
Well, I believe that the voters of Bossier City did when they elected individuals who ran on several things, including that, and 2 of those members.
And what did they, when they did that? I mean, you're saying that through their vote they did that, right?
I
But
believe
as
that
far as an actual administrative move, was there anything done by them?
it was an administrative move by 2 of the council members to begin the process of a charter review commission, but it takes 4 votes on our city council to initiate anything, and so they didn't have the votes.
So I think it'd be safe to say that as a whole, the city council was not eager to go down this road.
Well, probably not, but there was the first petition that was mentioned that had a fatal flaw in it. That was initiated, or that was brought to the city in July of 2023. In August of 2023, the city council began the process of initiating a charter review commission, which culminated in the
And
recommendation.
as I understand it, the charter commission, which I guess is appointed by the city council itself, right? Didn't you tell me that?
Each
And
city
the mayor.
council member gets.
So the elected people who are affected by this would be the ones who would actually create this commission.
Correct.
And this can be done either through petition or through this commission, correct? Isn't that what you told me before?
Well, you can amend the charter either through petition or through a charter review commission. What's before you today is the effort of the charter review commission.
Okay. So why did they went out and not the petitioners? Why didn't y'all move on theirs instead of the commission?
Well, with all due respect, Dr. Fleming, I represent 7 council members and a mayor, all of elected. Not all of them are on the same page. When you say, why didn't y'all? I don't represent any specific position. I'm here today
I didn't
because
say
I
y'all.
serve.
There's basically 2 methods. One
Correct.
is the commission, and one is the petition, commission and the petition. They rhyme. So it could have been either one. Why was it the commission and not the petition?
Well, the reason you have the commission here is because it's met all the process. You don't have the petition because they're in court where they chose the route of litigation and they're there.
Well, didn't they initiate this and then because they were thwarted in some way, didn't get to move forward? Is that my understanding?
I'm sure that would be their argument, but they filed a mandamus petition and they are in the courts.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say. I apologize for
No,
interrupting.
no. Those are great questions. I would also like to say that I would ask to not be swayed by the red herring of legal expenses. I don't have a clue where they've gotten this $500,000 legal expense. It's probably closer to $5,000. I'm here. I mean, I'm paid on salary. I'm not outside counsel. I'm not here on an hourly basis. There's a very tiny bit of money that has been spent on this, not $500,000. That's completely untrue. And I would also like to point out this issue of that it's not been publicized. Number one, every time that the Charter Commission would make changes, we would make paper copies available. We would post them on the city's website. The city's website has a current version of the amended and restated charter. Also, we've already initiated the process. It will be, the entire amended and restated charter will be publicized 3 times in the Bossier Press Tribune, actually 4 times. It'll be on October 16th, October 23rd, October 30th, and then November 6th. It will be, and we're working with them to do a special insert in the Bossier Press so that the public will have full knowledge of what is in the amended and restated charter, because we believe, and I believe even while the issue of retroactive term limits has become the hot button issue, I think the one thing we can all agree on is the Bossier City Charter is long overdue with changes that are desperately needed. And we don't need to get lost, that doesn't need to get lost in the mix, because those are things that need to be changed. And if we defer this, we're just creating more delay and more problems. And frankly, as I explained to the City Council last Thursday, and I would reiterate, the best course of action is to put before the voters these options in December. They will either adopt them or they won't, but it's up to the voters. If they, whatever they do, the Charter Commission recommendations are over with. If the petition effort gets on a ballot, and frankly, I mean, that's their prerogative, I hope they do. But if they do, it's better that they do after this new charter has been put before the people, because the last thing you want to do is they're not, I defer to Mr. Black on this, but the way they're all written, they're not compatible to be on the same ballot, and they're not compatible for the charter review proposed amendments to come after the petition amendments. So the way that this is set up, if we put these on December 7th, it's the procedurally cleanest way to do it. And again, I'll defer to Mr. Black on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've been sort of walking a fine line to make sure that the recommendations to amend the charter that came from the commission meet all of the charter requirements, but also meet the state requirements for propositions, right? It has to be in the form of a question. We can't be more than 200 words. So I think we've been very careful to make sure we are satisfying all of those legal requirements.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's all your remarks today, I'll be happy to offer anyone else who would like to speak today.
Only other thing I would like to say, Dr. Fleming, if I can, is that respectfully, I believe that there was a question or a request that the ad hoc commission render this effort relatively null or absolutely null. And frankly, as you pointed out, you're not a court. That's not your role. We're here. We've complied with all of the procedural requirements. The reason that we're at an ad hoc meeting is because there's been a concerted effort to slow this process. It has been difficult to get here, but it's been difficult because of opposition that is, has been very, very vocal, but it's a very small but vocal number of people. But we've met all the procedural requirements and would ask that we be allowed to put this to the voters, because there's a lot of people in Bossier City that want this on a ballot and want to be able to vote on term limits. I believe that, like I said in response to your question, what started this, I think it started in our election cycle in 2020 and 2021, when a lot of people ran on it, and the people that ran on it were elected. Clearly, the voters of Bossier City want term limits, and this is the way that the legislature has done it. This is the way that our school board did it. This is the way that every government that we can locate, that we can find, has done it. Make it prospective. Their version of term limits is retroactive, and it's a lifetime ban, and I'm not sure that that's ever been done anywhere in America. The constitutionality of it is not ripe yet. Until it's passed, that's a whole nother battle that would come probably at a later date. Let's put this to the people and allow them to vote on this. If their version comes later, then great. Then that amends that existing charter. That's the beauty of doing this today, but I would ask that we move forward with this today.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. And as I say, if there's anyone else that would like to speak. If not, Leila, why don't you come forward? Well, just some thoughts on this. As I understand it, our legal discretion is either to approve this, disapprove it or defer it. We don't, of course, have any, we don't have any room to roam on the legalities of all this. The administrative and legal responsibility to us has been met. However, probably one of the most, if not the most important right for an American citizen is under the First Amendment to petition its government. And my perception of this, the story, and I've heard both sides in detail, is that, is that this initiative to limit terms came from the people, and as a result, once the movement began, politicians who were running for office got involved in it. But my concern about this is that steps were kind of reluctant at first by the city council, and that eventually they gave in to the will of the people. But there are members, as I'm told, who've served many, many years who do not want the retroactive part of this. They'd still like to serve another 12 years, even after as many as 30 years. And I can understand where people who have a sincere belief that there should be term limits, that may be excessive to them. There's ongoing litigation on this question. And but I think, you know, from a procedural and even kind of a moral standpoint, I have a sense that the city council was very reluctant to move forward on this and had to be dragged kicking and screaming into this process. And if this goes forward as it is and it passes, I think it could block any further action, because the people of Bossier City will feel like that they have made their decision through their vote, and that would mean that there would be only prospective term limits. Now, it may be that retrospective term limits may actually be non-constitutional, but no one's made that point, so I'd assume that it's still an open question. So having said all of this, did I see another white card, by the way? Okay, good. So I want to make sure everyone has their voice here. I would ask for a motion to defer this to a later time. We have a TRO that was presented this morning that has not been signed, but we don't know whether it will be. I just think this controversy needs to be resolved by the people that affects the most, and that's the people of Bossier City. And when they're finished battling this out and coming to a solution, that they present that back to us. There's no emergency. This doesn't have to be done in December. It can be done next year if necessary. But I do think that this is an important issue. It affects the people of Bossier City. I do believe that because people do believe, voters do believe strongly now in term limits, I can see where there would be an overwhelming majority of people who feel like that it's time to implement term limits in Bossier City. So with that, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Wood from the Secretary of State's office. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Lester. Any objection? Hearing no objection, the Bond Commission will defer until this has been resolved through the legal matters. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda are our monthly reports. We have our submitted but not heard report. There were 2 this month, and that's all we have today.
Okay. Is there any other business before the subcommittee? Well, let me say I do appreciate everyone who is involved in this. I do think it's important that these sort of things are heard out. I want to make sure the people are heard. I want to make sure the politicians and office holders are heard. So it's important to me that that everyone provides their opinion and their expertise in all these matters. That's what we're here for in the Bond Commission, is to be sure that we've dotted every I and crossed every T in getting things correct. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Okay, a second. Okay, Mr. Lester. Hearing none, we are now adjourned.